Well, hey again, friends, and welcome back. This is Between the Shadows. I am Kristen Pearson. I am joined by my very favorite co-host, Miss Kara Tillitz.
Hey, hey.
And we are...
Between the Shadows.
That's us. My brain completely stroked off, guys. I am so sorry.
And we are happy to be here.
And we are so happy to be here, as you can tell. Oh, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We are back for episode 41 of Between the Shadows. And you guys, this is the last one until Burbank, y'all.
It is.
And that is happening so very soon. It is upon us, you guys. We are probably a week out or so.
Yeah.
And we are so excited. Oh, we're getting so ramped up. Can't wait. As always, we just want to say thank you so much for being here. We are talking about who in the world is Jeff Clark today. Mm-hmm. And we just want to talk about Jeff Clark and what happens with Jeff Clark and what happens with him and Vicky. And that's all I got. On with the show.
We will be covering episodes 622 to 637 with this topic.
About 15 episodes. Yeah. So stick with us. We've got a lot of info to cover, and it's a good one, y'all. So last time we left off, Julia and Willie finally found Barnabas and sent his butt off to Wincliffe before he died.
Yeah.
And that he's been staying safe there up at Wincliffe.
You know, it's funny, speaking of Wincliffe, nobody ever seems to stay safe at Wincliffe, though.
I know. Everybody seems to escape.
From Maggie to Barnabas to Willie.
I know.
Like, nobody ever seems to stay safe at Wincliffe.
Well, in fairness,
you know what I mean?
Willie was sprung from
Yeah,
Wincliffe.
he was sprung.
Willie seemed to be the only one who was content at Wincliffe.
but anyways.
So here we pick up. Nicholas wants Eve to follow Jeff Clark, because he cannot find Angelique.
Yeah.
He tried to stake her in her coffin, and she is gone. He cannot find her. So he wants Eve to tail Jeff Clark, now that Barnabas is gone, and see if she shows up see if she shows up to bite him.
Yeah.
And he has decided to destroy her, but she has moved her coffin and the mirror, and Angelique has been watching this whole conversation.
Yeah.
And discovers that Barnabas has been moved to Wincliffe.
Yeah.
And Eve agrees to watch Jeff if Nicholas will send her back to 1795 so that she can have proof that Jeff is really Peter Bradford.
Again, 1795. This had to have been not long before Vicky showed up.
Right. Well, I think we get there. I think that we're getting a little bit ahead, but I think when she finally gets sent back to 1795, we learn that this happened like 6 months prior to Vicky showing up.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
Okay.
But Nicholas refuses. He's not going to help her. And he's like, look, if you're not going to do this for me, I told you I'm going to kill you. And I mean it. I will.
Yeah.
So we go to the terrace at Collinwood where Jeff is trying to convince Vicky, let's get married this week on Friday. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a whole lot of convincing, but she does say yes as Eve is watching.
Well, I'm going to marry you anyways. So.
Yeah, it's like, I love you and I'm going to do it. Let's do it. And Jeff once again tells Eve to get lost. Get lost. I am not Peter Bradford. I am not interested in you.
Yeah.
And he leaves.
Yeah.
And Angelique intercepts her and offers her a way to go back to the past to get the proof that Eve so desperately wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some questions about this. I wondered, did Angelique simply do this? Did she do it to simply upset Nicholas and his plans? Or did she do it so that she could go and tell Diabolos that Nicholas has failed him?
It could be both.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to get ahead. I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
We're not going to get ahead, guys.
Okay, but remember what you said when we get there. She has proved over and over that she never does anything for anyone without payment.
Yeah.
She claims it's just so that Eve can protect her during the day, but I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. Here's what I think. And this is pure speculation. Leave your comments if you have any thoughts on it. But I think that Angelique wanted Eve to get the proof, because if she did, she would constantly be after Jeff. She would constantly be after him. Mm-hmm. And that would upset Nicholas's plans. And then she could go and tell Diabolos, hey, Nicholas failed.
Yeah. Well, and it's just a distraction so Angelique can work on Barnabas.
Yes.
It's a distraction. Like
that too.
And it's a huge one for Nicholas. Like you said, if Nicholas has to focus on just this, Angelique can swoop in just a second and get Barnabas. It only
Right.
takes a second.
Right.
Like,
and that is her plan, to turn Barnabas, but she's also got this other plan up her sleeve where she's going to go and talk to her master about Nicholas.
mm-hmm.
And so Eve goes back to Nicholas and tells and says that Angelique is headed towards the hospital because that's where Joe, and it makes sense to him because Joe is in the hospital.
Yeah.
And instead of going after Joe, she's going to go, or instead of going after Jeff, sorry, going after Jeff, she's going to go after Joe instead. That's what Eve tells Nicholas.
Right.
And it's really just an effort to get him to leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so she does get him to leave, and Angelique begins the spell to send Eve back to the past. She takes a medallion from Nicholas's desk and tells Eve that she will only have 6 hours to get the proof she needs.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she will be trapped in the past forever.
Mm-hmm.
And Angelique is successful and is able to get Eve back for 6 hours.
Yeah.
So does this mean that even though Angelique was a vampire, she still has all of her powers as a witch as well? Because damn! I mean, she was...
Yeah, it doesn't seem very fair. Like,
yeah, it's like...
Because her punishment was to be destroyed as a witch, and you would think she wouldn't have those powers.
Right. I mean, she's
wasn't... only alive and risen again because of Nicholas, not Diabolos, because of Nicholas. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you know, Diabolos rules over all and gives Nicholas the permission and power, but...
Right, but he kind of let Nicholas kind of have free reign.
Yeah.
Like, he trusts Nicholas enough to not have to be constantly in his affairs.
Or was that just, like, something that wasn't thought of? If you brought her back to life, she would still have those powers, even whether she was a vampire or not.
If it's
just something that was overlooked.
If it's true that she's a vampire, but she also has all of her powers as a witch, she was not living up to her full potential.
No.
She was just biting folks. I mean, do you realize how powerful a being she was?
Yeah.
If she was a vampire and still had all of her powers as a witch?
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
If she, again, if she hadn't been so hung up on Barnabas, she could have made a huge difference for the power of darkness or whatever.
Yeah.
So she's successful. We go back into the past, 1795, for just a little blip here. We go to the jailhouse where the jailer is holding the death warrant for Peter Bradford for the murder of Noah Gifford. Remember, Vicky killed Noah Gifford, but Peter Bradford is going to hang for it.
So here's the thing, because of that line right there, Danielle Roget, see, that's what I thought I remembered. You know, it all clashes together sometimes, but... Mm-hmm. What I thought I remembered was this, in that if the warrant for Peter's death was already on the table and Danielle Roget came back, was this only because she was sent back by Angelique at this time?
I think
so. Or did that really happen after Vicky was hung?
Here's
you know what I mean?
We don't know.
Because, don't change history.
Right. We don't honestly know. I don't know because Danielle Roget ended up being hanged. And she told the jailer that she had been away for 6 months. So maybe she hadn't been hung yet.
Okay.
I think she hadn't been hung yet because Peter tells her that, you know, he thinks it's hypocritical that he's sitting in jail for the murder of a man that he didn't even commit, but she goes free even after killing Philippe Cordier. Yeah. So maybe this did happen after Vicky went back to the present. We don't know.
Get to see. I don't know.
It's something we didn't get to see.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering, and that's what had my mind a little boggled.
That's what I choose to believe because we didn't see it. So for all we know, it could have happened. You know.
Okay. Just had to get that out of there.
No worries at all. So Eve shows up and demands to see Peter.
Yeah.
And she said that she was engaged to Peter, but the jailer says that he was in love with another girl who was just hanged a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter's pretty cold to her when she goes into the cell. She wants to change history and break him out, and they can go away together.
Mm-hmm.
And he's conflicted about it because he loves Vicky. He made a promise to Vicky, but he doesn't want to die.
Yeah.
So he goes along with her plan. And Eve goes up to Collinwood, where Ben Stokes has been ordered to burn the Collins family history book by Joshua.
Yeah.
And we find out that Joshua appealed to the governor to let Peter go free, but it was denied.
Mm-hmm.
And Eve takes the book from Ben and orders him to get horses for her and Peter.
Yeah.
And she heads up back to the jail. And they're about to take Peter to the gallows. And he's changed his mind about going with her.
Yeah.
He wrote her a letter explaining that he has to stay true to Vicky and he's chosen to go to the gallows in effort to find her.
Yeah.
And Eve's time is up in the past at this point. 6 hours have come and gone real quick.
Mm-hmm.
But she has all the proof she needs, she says. So she returns to the present with the book and Peter's letter in hand.
Mm-hmm.
She makes up some excuse, some elaborate excuse as to where she's been, and Nicholas leaves it alone, but demands that she makes more of an effort into making Adam believe that she loves him, and she says she will.
It's like, oh, okay.
And God, boy, does she ever. And it was actually really difficult to watch.
Yeah.
She makes a very convincing performance with Adam. She is seemingly very sweet and caring with him, and I believe that they were implying that Adam cashed in his V card, if you know what I mean. We all knew she was lying, but Adam bought it.
Yeah.
Hook, line, and sinker. Bought it.
Yeah.
And it broke my heart. It broke my heart.
Yeah.
And so from here we go to Collinwood, where Vicky is preparing for her wedding that evening. She has tried on her dress 1,000,000 times, and now she is asking to borrow her mom's car, y'all, Elizabeth's car, to go into town. Because that's how this relationship seems. Can I borrow your car to go into town? Yeah, here's the keys, you know?
Yeah.
And she accidentally says Peter instead of Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily not to his face, and then reminds herself once more that she is marrying Jeff Clark.
Yeah. She examines the wedding presents she received, one of which is the Collins family history. And there's a card that says it's from Peter. She gets dressed for the wedding with Elizabeth's help, and she gets to wear Naomi Collins' wedding veil.
Which is kind of cool, I think.
And Jeff waits on the terrace, and Eve shows up with the letter Peter wrote to her that she had just come back from the past with.
Yeah.
And she claims it's the proof that he is Peter Bradford.
Yeah.
And she reads the letter to him and shows him that it's his handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff asks for Vicky and calls off the wedding. He wants to know the truth, and Roger tries to talk some sense into him, but he can't convince him.
Mm-hmm.
And he follows Jeff into the graveyard, where he breaks into Peter Bradford's tomb and discovers the empty coffin.
No evidence that there even was a body in it.
Yeah.
And Jeff chooses not to go back to Collinwood, but Vicky decides to go after him.
Yeah.
We see Eve waiting in Jeff's apartment because she's convinced, oh, now he knows he's Peter Bradford, now he's going to come to me. She's convinced that now that Jeff knows he's actually Peter Bradford, that's going to change everything, and he's going to realize that he loves her and come looking for her.
Yeah.
But instead, Adam finds her there.
Mm-hmm.
And we see all of the pain that Adam is feeling after that beautiful moment where Eve made him believe he was loved and wanted and accepted. Mm-hmm. Again, Eve is the last choice for him, the last resort for him.
Yeah.
And now she's telling him it was all a lie and how ugly it is and that she can't even stand the sight of him.
Yeah.
And Adam loses his temper and kills her, strangles her to death. And Jeff comes back to his apartment to pack up and move away and start somewhere else. But Vicky is close behind.
Yeah.
And she tells him that he can't run away and from what he's learned, and they can deal with it together. And he thinks that he doesn't have much time to spend in this time, and that he can't marry Vicky knowing that he's going to go back to the past eventually.
Right.
And this goes on for a few minutes, but then they find Eve dead in his closet.
Yeah.
Like, Adam wanted Jeff to look guilty for killing Eve.
Right.
Which, holy crap, Adam, where'd you get that from? You know?
Yeah.
And Vicky convinces Jeff to call the police, and they take him into custody for the murder of Eve.
Angelique meets Adam in the woods and tells Adam everything that Nicholas was planning for him and Eve, and wants Adam to go back to the house and pretend to be shocked that Eve is dead, so Angelique can make plans to dispose of Nicholas.
Yes, this is her plan.
And from here, we go to Collinsport Hospital, where Joe is, and he has an unexpected visitor in Chris Jennings, his cousin.
Yes.
And Tom Jennings' twin brother. Mm-hmm. Chris has come to ask questions about his brother's death. And Joe can answer, but says that his death is still a mystery. And he has a sneaking suspicion that his brother was murdered. Mm-hmm. And he's already talked to the sheriff, and the sheriff gave him a list of names that Tom had encounters with.
Yeah.
And it's here we learn that there is a third Jennings named Amy, their little sister, who has been under the watchful eye of Julia Hoffman, again at Wyncliffe.
At Wyncliffe, yeah.
And who has just entered the room and freaked out because she swears she's just seen Tom.
Yeah, another scream from Grayson Hall. Ah, Tom!
Ah! But once Chris has left the room, Joe tells Julia that Chris is a mysterious person. Like, he used to have a full life and went to college, to study architecture, but then something strange happened to him, and nobody knows what, and he, dropped out and became a total recluse and didn't even come to town for Tom's funeral and hasn't seen his little sister since it all happened.
Yeah. So he tells Julia that he's not the best person to take care of Amy. Like, he's the only one left.
Like, he doesn't ever stay in one place for too long. Like, he's always gone.
It's like the type of lifestyle that he leaves. He isn't specific by any means, but he says that he'll drop by and see her while he's in town.
Yeah.
And so we go back to Angelique, who's in the process of trying to get Nicholas returned to darkness, as she puts it. She lights a candle and calls on all the powers of darkness to summon the devil, who goes by the name Diabolos.
Mm-hmm.
And she is successful in reaching him. And he makes her come to him.
Yeah.
Which seems like a rather painful process.
Yeah.
We see it in Angelique, and then we see it again with Nicholas later.
Yeah.
Like they're both like, going down into hell, know? And
this is what I was going to say now that we're here and Angelique is there. What I was going to say is, like, when this whole, her saying to Nicholas, oh, now you know how it feels to be human, you're starting to get those human feelings, right? Now you know how I feel, and this and that. What is the first thing she tells Diabolos about Nicholas? He's after a human. He's in love with a human, and this and this. That's the first thing she throws at Diabolos.
Right.
To get him to punish Nicholas.
Right.
Like, that's the first thing she goes after. And
Diabolos kind of buys it. He's like, that's the most despicable of all sins is falling in love. You know? And so she goes into hell, and she more or less tattles on Nicholas.
Yeah.
Tells him that the plan to create a super race of humans has failed because one has turned on the other and killed them.
Yeah.
And
he's fallen in love with a human.
Yeah. And Angelique asks for the chance to outwit him.
Yeah.
And get sent back to hell.
Get him sent back to hell.
Yeah. And in return, she wants the curse to be removed from her.
Mm-hmm.
And Diabolos more or less agrees after telling Angelique how much she screwed up.
Yeah.
But not before he deals with Nicholas.
Right.
And Maggie shows up at Nicholas's, not sure why she's there.
Yeah.
Just completely baffled as to why she's there. Said, I was getting ready for bed, and then I just felt like I had to come here.
Yeah.
And she begins to feel strange. She's like, I can't see anything, I can't breathe, and passes out.
Yeah.
And this scene, you guys, this scene freaked me out so much. Like, the room turns red. Yeah. And Maggie opens her mouth, and Diabolos' voice comes out, and it is the creepiest thing.
It is creepy.
Or at least up there in, like, top 5 creepiest things that has ever happened in this show.
It's true.
And
like, oh my God. They're like, we've said this before, but it's like, are they really going to go there? They really went there.
Did.
Like, the devil was speaking through Maggie, and it was so scary.
Oh my gosh.
So scary.
And the thing, it's like he tells Nicholas through Maggie to prepare for his judgment and that he has failed.
Yeah.
And instead of telling Diabolos, I haven't failed, I haven't done this, he begs Diabolos not to harm Maggie, which is not doing anything for his case right now.
Right.
Which is the point where we realize that Nicholas has indeed fallen in love with her.
You're not supposed to give a crap
right.
about anything or anyone, just your mission.
Yeah, and that's what Diabolos says. He was like, oh, all of a sudden you're the protector of innocent lives, of the pure at heart.
Mm-hmm.
And Nicholas was like, no, of course not. He was like, well, it's nice to find that you can still lie, Nicholas. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And
right.
So he was like, midnight, I'm coming for you at midnight. And so Nicholas returns, it's all over. Maggie doesn't know what's happened. And Nicholas returns Maggie back to her house.
Yeah.
But then goes to Collinwood to meet with Julia.
Mm-hmm.
He comes to her for help, which Julia almost laughs at,
Just like he laughed at her when she's like, I know the truth.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, she wants to laugh at it until Nicholas tells her what his real plan is, and then Julia is absolutely mortified. Mm-hmm. Mortified. Mm-hmm. He was like, I will refer you to the book of Genesis, where Adam and Eve were the first human beings.
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, now there'll be a new Adam and Eve, but who will serve my master? She's like, what? Mm-hmm. She is just mortified.
Like he's actually coming clean.
I mean, all cards are on the table at this point.
Yeah.
And he tells her that his plan was for Adam and Eve to be the beginning of a new super race that would serve the devil. Mm-hmm. And basically, Nicholas wants her to redo the experiment with Eve with a new life force. So Nicholas goes to his meeting with Diabolos and begs for more time to come up with a plan to make the plan that he has come up with come to pass and with Eve, and he says that he has a plan in place and that the experiment is going to take place again this night. And after much arguing and much trying to convince Diabolos, he let him have a second chance, but also tells him that in order for him and Maggie to be together, Nicholas has got to sacrifice her in black mass. So he tries very hard to convince Maggie to marry him, and Maggie very much wants to, or it seems.
Yeah. We
see her going up to Collinwood to talk to Vicky about it. And by the way, pause. In this scene where Maggie is talking to Vicky about Nicholas and potentially getting married, we've got to change. Sorry about the sirens, guys. Love the big city, don't you? But we have a change in actresses with Vicky.
That's right.
Alexandra Mulkey was pregnant and came off the show, and a woman by the name of Betsy Durkin is now playing Vicky Winters. She does a very admirable job playing Vicky, and I really didn't mind her so much. She did a pretty good job.
I kind of did.
Did you?
Yeah.
You didn't like Betsy Durkin?
Not really. No offense to her, but oh my god, she was so not Vicky.
She wasn't like we've seen Alexandra Mulkey for so long that it really was weird to have another actress take her place for the duration of Vicky being on the show. And while I did think she did a pretty good job, I do feel like Betsy Durkin was just a little bit more dramatic.
She was more. She could have filled in for Carolyn better.
Yeah,
the character of Carolyn and not Vicky.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Not saying she's a bad actress. That's not what I'm saying at all. But oh my god, she was so not Vicky Winters. Yeah, I get that. I just didn't buy it. It was so distracting.
her Vicky Winters and Alexandra's Vicky were two very different characters, and the dynamic did seem to change a lot.
Like, as actresses, like, their approach and their deliverance of the character was just very different.
Right, I agree.
Different. And that's okay, but I just couldn't get into it, guys.
I agree. That's
it really distracted me.
That's why we do this. There are no wrong answers here in the world of Dark Shadows and on this show, Between the Shadows. So.
But yes, admirable job. For stepping in like that. Just like that. For
absolutely.
Stepping in. Good on
For
you.
Probably not knowing her lines till the day she got there. So,
yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
So Vicky is trying to convince Maggie that this is a terrible idea. Yeah. I mean, Vicky cannot give her any details, of course. Just says that she can't trust him. And Maggie storms out. She's like, well, if you don't approve my choice.
Like, after all I've done and supported you with this Jeff Peter bullcrap.
Yeah.
Like, you can't support me.
It's like, I gave your man a place to stay, too. How about that?
Right, exactly. Exactly. She's like, screw you guys, too. Shoot.
But that doesn't stop Vicky. She goes down to Blair's house and basically tells him to bugger off, and that if he does this, she'll find a way to stop him. And, like, fearless, she goes down there, she's like, I'm not going to let this happen.
I'm not afraid of you.
Oh, my gosh.
I think she even said it. She's like, I'm not afraid of you.
No. And here's what, Nicholas could have very easily fixed Vicky after what she said to him.
Yeah.
But instead, he tells her that she may lose Maggie's friendship if she gets into the way of the wedding or the marriage or whatever this is.
Yeah.
And that's all he does. Yeah. And after she leaves, he thinks to himself the very same thing. He could have caused her to walk out the door of the house and not remember why she was even there.
Yeah.
But then he tells himself that Maggie Evans makes him human.
He stood there and fought for her like a human being.
Yes.
In love.
Yes.
Instead of just using his magic to get out of my house. Get out of my house.
Yeah. like, Maggie Evans makes him human, he says to himself. Yeah. So instead, he resurrects Tom as a vampire.
See, we thought we were done with Tom.
I know. And now, especially now that we have Chris Jennings.
Now that Chris is on the scene, you're like, oh my god.
It's so weird. Okay, there is a scene coming up where they're both on the scene.
Yes, it's so crazy.
It's crazy.
Like, I think it's Chris's back is to the window and Tom's scary face pops up
in the window. Yes.
Oh my god. I was like, oh my god, are they really going to do it? Split screen.
Oh.
Like later on, they do it in another time later on, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But it was the first time we had seen it, I think, in the show. Yeah. And it was so bizarre.
That's why I thought at first, when I first watched this, that it was two different people.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's the same Don Briscoe.
I mean, awesome for Don Briscoe. Like,
because again,
you really made me believe you had a twin.
we've said it before, that Don Briscoe gave two very different performances as Tom and Chris. Yeah. And I fully believed it was a set of twins, y'all. I really did.
Like, you could tell, like, after we know the story of Chris and the tiny bit we knew about Tom, like, you could even tell the difference in added, like Tom, he talked to people all the time. He was kind of an extrovert.
Yeah.
Chris was very introverted.
Yes.
Like, you could tell.
He was,
and he
was
did a good
recluse.
job deciphering the two, like, making sure the difference was there in the two.
Right, exactly. But he resurrects Tom Jennings as a vampire and sends him after Vicky. But luckily, Barnabas was there because Vicky was just telling him about Nicholas's plans to marry Maggie, and Barnabas is like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
So after all this, Barnabas goes down to Nicholas and warns him, stay away from Maggie, stay away from Vicky, or we will not do this. We will not do this experiment.
Yeah.
And Barnabas sets out to destroy Tom all over again. And he does. He is able to vanquish him at dawn by refusing him his coffin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when he does this, he's like, I'm so sorry. I feel so bad for you. I know what it means to do this. I'm so sorry. You know. Oh, by the way, Julia sprung Barnabas from Wyncliffe when she discovered she had to do the experiment again. Remember, he was at Wyncliffe. Now he's not. Yeah. So, and now that
like Angelique, I said, nobody stays at Wyncliffe.
Nobody stays. Nobody stays. So Nicholas and Harry retrieve Eve's body to bring it to Julia to do the experiment again. But Nicholas is beginning to get antsy about Maggie. He wants to marry her more than anything, but she has still not agreed. And Nicholas gives in to his abilities and powers and calls to her and just says, Maggie, you want to marry me. You're going to make this decision. Yeah. You're going to come and tell me you want to get married.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she does. And he tells her that his plan is for them to get married that very night and to leave town immediately and go to London for Nicholas's business. Apparently, hell is London.
London is hell.
London is hell. But the truth of the matter is that Nicholas intends to sacrifice her in this black mass, have her act as the life force for Eve, and then take her back to hell with him. Because the only way they can be together is if Maggie dies. This is what Diabolos told him.
Yeah.
And that's what he plans to do, which, if you really loved her, you'd have given her up, homie. Yeah. But he's a dark being, and I don't expect him to understand.
It's your first time being in love, again. You gotta go through it a couple times to get it.
It's like telling you marry your first love. But so also in this episode, we get a little bit of other information. We see Chris Jennings, who has gone to Wyncliffe to see his little sister, Amy. And Amy is exceptionally angry with Chris.
Yeah.
Because she feels abandoned and he won't stay and take care of her and she's stuck at this hospital.
She's kind of in that mood where she just doesn't talk to anybody. She's like silent treatment everybody. Like,
yes.
She's that jaded and that sad and that angry.
And that damaged. Yeah.
And that damaged, yeah.
Good job by Denise Nickerson, who Dark Shadows is not the first thing I ever saw her in, you guys.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm alone on this. The very first time I saw Denise Nickerson was Willy Wonka.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little Violet Beauregard.
Yeah.
But she does a fantastic job as Amy Jennings.
Even though she was younger in Dark Shadows.
She was. But she was fabulous. She was fantastic. And Chris changes his mind, at least to Amy's face, and says that he'll stay and take care of her. And he's also gotten a glimpse of what the weather report is supposed to be that night. And the paper says that it's going to be clear and cold with a full moon.
Like, what's that got to do with anything?
Right. We have no idea. And he goes back to his hotel. And Mr. Wells, who we haven't seen since the beginning, y'all, is there to help Chris. Yeah. Changes his room. He wants to change his room to something isolated and something that's not near people. And to this room, it has bars on it, and it's just far away. And
he's like, really, it's just a closet.
Yeah, it's like, this. You deserve something better than this. And Chris is like, this is fine, and I need absolute quiet. Do not come in this room. I don't care what you hear. He says he needs the quiet and he needs the isolation because he's a writer. And I don't know about the rest of y'all. I don't know about any of you, but I certainly wasn't buying what he was saying.
Yeah,
I didn't buy it.
Like, why are you talking?
Take the book back. I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, eventually we do see a scene where there is thrashing, there is noises coming from that room, and Mr. Wells' curiosity gets the better of him, and this is the very last time we see Mr. Wells because he dies.
Yeah.
So, but we still don't know why. We still don't know how. We just know that he was a bloody mess and being dragged away. Yeah. So, but that's all we get for that.
After that, we see Nicholas and Maggie, who are preparing to be married at Nicholas's house. And Maggie is nervous, so Nicholas gives her a glass of champagne with a little something extra in it.
Yeah.
And that makes her pass out, and then we see Nicholas perform this black mass to sacrifice Maggie.
Let the legions of the damned salute you.
Yeah.
Whew. Oh my gosh.
It looks like he like drinks blood or something.
Yeah, the blood of something, I forget.
Yeah. But the plan is going off so far so good. Julia and Barnabas are in the basement of the old house preparing Eve's body for the injection of another life force.
Yes.
And Adam arrives and Nicholas arrives with Maggie as the life force.
Oh gosh.
And she has this Maggie attitude. Like, it's funny.
But there's something
she's very
different about it.
But she's very cold.
Very different about it. I mean, this scene heats up real quick style.
Yeah.
And Barnabas and Julia are absolutely stunned and 100% against Maggie being used as the life force. But like we said, something has changed in Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
Her countenance seems much darker and almost sinister since the Black Mass.
Mm-hmm.
And she assures them that she's willing to go through. She knows what's going on. She knows what's at risk. And Nicholas tells her that no matter what, he will be with her. Yeah. And this seems to be the only thing that matters to Maggie in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And Barnabas tries to refuse and tries to shut off the equipment, or at least get Julia to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a shouting match, and Nicholas causes Adam's heart to beat and beat faster and faster, which of course makes Barnabas's heart to beat faster and faster.
Yeah.
Until Julia caves and says that she'll use Maggie. And Nicholas causes Adam to fall asleep so that he won't interfere. I think he just wanted to get Adam out of the way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So the experiment begins, and Barnabas becomes more and more anxious and uneasy the more Maggie feels the pain, and then goes unconscious as all of the life forces have at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to connect the dots where Nicholas said he'll be with her no matter what, and realizes that Maggie will die, and that's exactly what Nicholas has intended. Yeah. So Barnabas goes on an emotional rampage, just like the flip of a switch, and destroys all of the equipment, stopping the experiment just as Eve's arms begin to move.
Mm-hmm.
But because of what Barnabas did, it causes Eve's body to be completely destroyed, and all that's left is a skeleton.
Mm-hmm. And her perfect hair.
I'm sorry, you couldn't have Marie Wallace's. You couldn't not have Marie Wallace's hair. It was beautiful.
It's almost as if Diabolos was watching all of this unfold, which I'm sure he was.
Yeah, yeah.
Once the experiment fails because of what Barnabas did, suddenly Nicholas has no power. And he tries to kill Adam, but it doesn't work. And Nicholas ends up running out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And everything in the scene happens so fast. Barnabas runs after Nicholas. Julia is trying to make sure that Maggie is okay. And Adam is in total despair because he is convinced he now has nobody, now that Eve's body is destroyed. And Maggie doesn't seem to remember any of the events from that evening. And the whole thing is just a mess and a whirlwind.
Yeah.
And we see Barnabas at Widow's Hill, where Nicholas has ended up. And Nicholas is pleading with Diabolos just to give him more time, but it seems that Diabolos has finally had enough of Nicholas and burns him up and takes him back to hell.
Yes.
And we see this wide grin, on Barnabas' face. I don't think we have seen Barnabas smile this hard.
No.
Ever.
No, and I don't think we ever will again.
Yeah.
You can just
you can just
tell. You can just tell how satisfied and how relieved Barnabas is. The smile, it's like,
yeah.
I mean, it was so uncharacteristic of Barnabas. I mean, it was just...
And he goes back to the old house and tells Julia what he saw and that Nicholas is gone. And they have a moment of relief and happiness until they realize that Adam is no longer at the house.
Yeah.
Like, they come back down and
Yep.
realize Adam is going to Collinwood to carry out his threat to kill Vicky because his mate is now dead.
Yeah.
And he manages to knock out Carolyn before returning to the old house with Vicky. In his rage, he attempts to use Vicky as the life force to bring Eve's body back to life, even though it's now a skeleton. Obviously, Adam is not thinking clearly in this moment.
No, Adam is in a blind rage. Like, I think he's seeing red. Like there's nothing rational about his thought right now.
Yeah. And Barnabas and Julia catch him, and Barnabas ends up shooting Adam in the back, knowing that if Adam dies, Barnabas will be a vampire again. But we all know how Barnabas feels about Vicky, and he is willing to take that chance in order to save her.
Yeah.
But we all know that Barnabas is a terrible shot.
Yep, he sure is.
And let's remember how he missed Angelique when she put the curse on him, so Adam does not die.
He's just terribly wounded.
Yeah. So Adam is able to leave the house. Julia wants to go after him, but Barnabas is far too concerned about Vicky to leave her. And he convinces Julia to stay and examine her, and she determines that she will live. but now is concerned that she will have to make arrangements for Barnabas to have a coffin in the morning.
Yeah, she wanted to go after Adam, but Barnabas was like, "No, Vicky first, Vicky first."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Okay, should I call Willie? Get him to get a coffin for this room?"
Mm-hmm.
And he was, he just didn't care. He just wanted Vicky to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, he knew the risk. He was like, "Didn't I know that risk when I pulled that trigger?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, but you're a terrible shot, Barnabas. So
Mm-hmm.
you get to live another day."
Right. So Adam goes to the one place he knows he will be safe and taken care of. He goes to Professor Stokes.
Yes.
And Professor Stokes is so kind to him and calls his doctor immediately to have his bullet wound treated.
Mm-hmm.
And Stokes convinces him that he will be fine and they can make a new life for him. And this time he will follow through with teaching him the right way.
Oh, I think he
was already teaching him the right way. He just got hooked up with Nicholas. And
yeah. I mean, Professor felt like he had failed with not following through. Mm-hmm. But he's like, "Oh, this is my second chance. This time I'm going to make it right. I'm going to make it good,
Yeah. And at this moment, Jeff Clark comes calling.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen this, but Professor Stokes has offered his help to Jeff to figure out whether or not he is actually Peter Bradford.
Apparently, there's still some doubt.
Yeah. And he has collected herbs that have power, and he conducts a ceremony with these herbs. And we find out that Jeff Clark is indeed Peter Bradford. Like, it puts him in a trance or something.
And he says, he puts him in a trance, asks him what his parents' names are, asks him what year he was born, and then tosses him a pen and says, "Here, write your name." And it's Peter Bradford.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the ceremony has caused whatever forces are at work to draw Jeff back into the past where he belongs.
Yes.
And Vicky has intercepted these forces and is able to keep him there for the time being as they choose to get married this night.
Yeah. After he's
gotten
Jeff back.
Yeah, and he's gotten the proof that I am Jeff Clark, or whatever proof he needed to feel 100% that he is Peter Bradford, not Jeff.
Peter Bradford, yeah.
But it's 3 a.m, and they called on a justice of peace and Elizabeth's daughter to be present so they can be married this night.
Yes.
So Jeff isn't sure that getting married is the best thing, just like he was unsure on the night of their actual wedding.
Yeah.
When he realized that Peter Bradford's grave was empty.
He keeps telling Vicky, he was like, "It's like you'll be marrying a corpse, and eventually I'm gonna have to leave you."
Yeah.
And she is just overly convinced, "My love will keep you here. My love brought you here. It'll keep you here." She has no doubt.
Yeah. But they do end up married, and Jeff is replaying the moment where Vicky was about to be hanged, and he was telling her that no matter what, he will find her through space and time.
Yeah. But it happens. They do get married. She is now Vicky Clark, and they sail off into their honeymoon suite and toast with a bottle of warm champagne and toast to their marriage. But when morning comes, it all comes to a crashing halt when Jeff/Peter is recounting the moments of 1795 and where he and Vicky first met and how awful those days were. And he's remembering it so vividly, and he is pulled back so strongly.
Yeah.
That he can't stop it and Vicky can't stop it, and all that is left is the watch that Vicky had given him just a few moments before.
That's probably a good place to stop.
Yeah, no, that
pretty much wraps up Who in the World is Jeff Clark.
Who in the World is Jeff Clark? He is Peter Bradford.
Yeah.
And he has been called back to the past, back where he belongs.
Yeah.
And Vicky is not a widow, but her husband is gone.
Yeah.
And
he's right. He's a dead man.
He's a dead man.
In 1968, whatever year we're in right now, he is a dead man. He's a corpse.
Yeah.
He doesn't belong there.
He told her, he's like, "I've already had too
and
much time."
And really, we still don't get an answer how, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but we don't even understand how he got back to this time. You know what I mean?
It's like he willed himself to be there.
When we first saw him in the middle of the road when Vicky almost hit him, you know?
Exactly.
From there to here now.
Exactly.
Who in the world is Jeff Clark? And this is it. He's Peter Bradford.
Vicky ends up leaving the honeymoon suite and like a zombie walks back into Collinwood because she had nowhere else to go, didn't know what else to do, and that's it, you know? So that's what we'll leave you with here for tonight. And that is Who in the World is Jeff Clark. And we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And I've enjoyed talking about this because the Jeff Clark, Peter Bradford storyline is one of my favorites. And it's sad. And it did make me shed a tear when I first watched it.
It's bittersweet.
It is bittersweet. But
because me personally, all I wanted for him was to be Jeff Clark.
Yeah.
I mean, because
I wanted him to be Jeff Clark too, and when we
Yeah.
finally found out that he was, it was like, oh, he's Peter Bradford, but
yeah,
but there's a catch, you
Yeah.
know, and it's just
yeah,
but
It was-
that's it, you guys.
yeah,
That's it.
that's it.
And guys, this is the last time we will talk until LA and the Remembrance Weekend, and we can't wait. We're excited. Just as a friendly reminder, reach out to us, guys, if you have comments, concerns, questions, feedback. We want it all. We hear it all. And find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Check out our post there. And
Until Burbank.
Remember to keep it between us and the shadows. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Dear Danielle, the guard will give you this. I am not going to escape with you tonight. Sitting here now, I can hear the men testing the gallows. But I am not afraid. I was the last time I heard them. Vicky, the woman I loved, was waiting, as I wait now. She's gone on. Perhaps this is my way of showing her. I must take that chance. I love her that much. Peter.
You've been listening to Between the Shadows, a Dark Shadows podcast. All original Dark Shadows music, video clips, images, and media are not owned by Between the Shadows and is the sole property of Dan Curtis Productions and is only used to promote Dark Shadows and should not be distributed, copied, or reproduced.